I never believed in ghosts. I did. I believed in people, and that they do the scariest things. I used to make crime documentaries. I was used to seeing blood, screams, and shuddering confessions in interrogation rooms. But there was one thing no camera could capture: the sound of fear when it was alive, before it had a name. I heard it for the first time, right under my bed. It wasn't a mouse. It wasn't the wind. It was 3 knocks, even, patient, as if someone knew exactly when I'd fallen asleep. 3 knocks at 3:11 a.m. Not fast, not slow. Like the rhythm of someone who knew I was the only one in the room. I'd moved into the apartment 2 weeks ago. A ground floor room, painted gray, so cheap I didn't dare ask why. The landlady, Mrs. Whitlow, spoke like someone reading a memorized advertisement. Quiet, clean, previous occupants for years with no complaints. Previous occupant? I asked. Ah, a young man. Moved out. Moved out or disappeared? She laughed, her laugh dry as paper. You've watched too many movies, Ria. I laughed too, not thinking about it. It wasn't until I made the bed, pulled out the mattress, that I noticed a few scratches across the floor, straight, deep, as if someone had tried to open something underneath. The first night, I woke up to a knock, knock, knock. I sat up, my heart pounding. I thought I'd misheard, but the phone on the nightstand said 3:11, and the sound was still ringing steadily. Knock, knock, knock. I shined the light under the bed. There was only dust, a few strands of hair, and the damp smell of old wood. I reached down. It was cold. Nothing. But when I pulled my hand back, there was a 4th single knock like an answer. I couldn't sleep again. I kept the light on all night, my eyes glued to the floor. When morning came, I noticed a slightly raised spot in the wood joints, painted a different color. I poked at it with a pencil. It clicked. Empty. I told Mrs. Whitlow the next morning. Maybe you hear the pipes, she said, not meeting my eyes. Pipes don't knock 3 times in the same place, I replied. She was silent, then smiled faintly. Old floors. Don't let your imagination make a movie in your bedroom. But that night, at 3:12, it knocked again. 3 times, just like the first time. Then it stopped. Then the tapping. Slow, long, like fingernails scraping across wood. I sat motionless, a cold sweat running down the back of my neck. I realized that what was scaring me the most was not the tapping, but the feeling that someone was listening back from the other side of the floor. I don't remember how long I sat watching that video. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely press replay. I kept hoping it was fake. Light reflection, some rodent, anything. But it wasn't. It was a human hand. I sent the clip to Miles Dorn, my engineer friend. He watched 5 seconds, then said, "Send me your address. I'm coming over." 30 minutes later, he was in my room, flashlight and hammer in hand. He tapped the floor. Hollow. "There's a space here," he whispered. "Basement?" "No, it's not in the plans, and it's deeper than wiring space." He found one plank with mismatched paint and a clean straight cut. "Someone opened this before." "Maybe the landlord?" I asked. He hesitated. "I think she knows. Maybe she sealed it." That night, I reset the GoPro, aiming straight at that plank. Left my phone recording sound. 3:11 a.m. A faint metallic scrape. 3:12. 3 knocks. I watched live on my phone. The plank moved slightly. A finger came through the gap. Dirty. Cracked. Nails black. It knocked 3 times, right against the lens. The sound was deafening. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Next morning, I played the recording again. Between the knocks, I heard a whisper, a man's voice. Still there. I sent it to Miles. He texted, "Leave that place. Don't touch the floor. I'll call the police." The police came, looked around, knocked on the boards, shrugged. "Just old wood," one said. "Thermal expansion." I didn't argue. I knew the difference between wood and breath. That night, I stayed awake on a chair, watching the floor, Around 2:50, I heard soft movement, scrape, scrape, like crawling, then breathing. So close it warmed the floor. I reached for the door. Behind me, 3 knocks. Sharp, near, under where I'd been standing. I ran into the hallway. Mrs. Whitlow was there, wearing a nightgown, calm as ever. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "There's someone under the floor." She smiled. "Don't mind it. It only knocks when it gets lonely." The next morning, I started packing. When I unplugged the camera charger near the bed, I noticed a black wire running down through the wall into the floor gap. I tugged it gently. It jerked back. And from beneath the floor, a hoarse male voice said, "Don't pull that. I'm watching you, Rhea." I didn't sleep for 3 nights after hearing that voice under the floor. Not out of curiosity, but because I couldn't stand the thought that someone could see me when I couldn't see them. I called Miles Dorn and sent him the audio. "That's not interference," he said. "That's a person less than a meter away." "So he's under me?" "Exactly." He came the next morning with a scanner and flashlight. The floor sounded hollow. Not wiring space, not pipes. "Someone built this intentionally," he said. We unscrewed a loose board. Cold air rushed up, damp, metallic, and rotten. A narrow cavity about 5 feet deep, with a small ladder and a hand lying palm up on the concrete. I froze. "A body?" "Fake hand," Miles said. "Looks like a model." Then it twitched and vanished. Footsteps echoed beneath the floor, running. We bolted out of the room. In the hallway, Mrs. Whitlow was waiting. She looked at us, calm. "You went down there? There's someone under the floor," I shouted. "I know," she said softly. "You know?" Miles yelled. "He used to be my son. He doesn't like the light. You woke him up." Her tone was flat, almost kind. We ran past her. When we turned back, the floor hatch was closed. That night, we left the lights on. Around 3 a.m., the GoPro turned itself on. The footage showed my floor, filmed from below. A man's face leaned into the lens, eyes wide, skin cracked. He whispered, "Told you not to pull the wire." Miles ripped the power cord out. Lights died. We ran into the street. Behind us, faint but steady. 3 knocks. Slow, even, final. The next day, police opened the floor. They found a hidden space, blanket, cans, old batteries, and a camera. No person. But on the wall, written in black ink, "Thanks for staying with me every night." After the police left, the room looked like a morgue. Ceiling tape was across the floor. The report was on the table. No individuals found. They left, leaving behind silence and a musty, musty smell. Miles told me to stay at his house. I nodded, but then turned back. For some reason, I couldn't bear to leave without knowing what was really under there. I started checking the outlet near the bed. An old black wire ran down underneath, wrapped in electrical tape. I pulled gently. It jerked back. The force wasn't strong, but it was clear. I stood there frozen, feeling like someone was holding my hand through the wood. I called to Miles. Me. "It's still there." Miles. "Get out of the room." Me. "I need proof." Miles. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't open the floor." I turned off the camera, locked the door, and pulled the cabinet to block the exit. I set the GoPro in the corner of the ceiling, facing the floor. Before pressing record, I whispered into the microphone, "If I get in trouble, watch from 1425. I sat on the bed, not moving. Then I heard it, breathing. Heavy, slow, even, like a person's breath trapped in humid air for years. A moment later, a knock. Not the familiar 3 beats, but a short, broken series, like a code. I knocked again. The breathing below paused, then intensified. A man's voice was hoarse, close to the floor. "Don't go anywhere. Stay." I didn't answer. Miles arrived at 1440. He carried a flashlight, pliers, and a thin steel plate. He reopened the panel the police had sealed. The screw was loose, as if someone had opened it before we returned. A gust of damp air blew up. Miles shone a light down. No one. Just a small tunnel extending into the next room. He looked at me. The corner room. Mrs. Whitlow's room. We set up 2 cameras. One in the corner, one right at the mouth of the tunnel. Miles sprinkled charcoal powder around the edge of the wood. "If someone crawls through, it'll leave a mark," he whispered. We waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Then a finger appeared, black and thin, slowly rising to the edge of the hole. It traced a circle around the powder, then retracted. On the recording, there was a soft swallowing sound and a human voice. "You lie on me. I was here before you. Don't turn off the light." Miles squeezed my shoulder, signaling me to stop. He whispered, "Plan B." Plan B was simple. I left the room through the main door, pretending to leave. Miles stayed, turned off the light, and waited for him to crawl up and smash the steel plate blocking it. "Miles, just 1 minute. When you hear me knock 3 times, call 113. I slammed the door shut, walked down the stairs, counted slowly to 60, and returned through the back door. Distantly, I heard a click. The wooden lid opened. I held my breath, looking through the crack in the door. A figure slid out of the floor. Pale skin, matted hair, creaking joints. As soon as Miles raised his shoulder, he slammed the steel plate down. A roar echoed under his feet, the sound of punches. A voice on the floor. "Open up!" "Miles, Ria, call now." I dialed 113, reciting the address, my voice shaking to the point of choking. We pulled the cupboard, pressed it against the floorboard. The banging stopped, replaced by the sound of crawling in another direction. Miles said quickly, "He went to the other side, to Whitlow's room." I ran into the hallway, pushed open the corner door. It was unlocked. The room was empty, the smell of ointment was strong. There was only a newly painted floorboard, the edge still covered with blue tape. I called, "Mrs. Whitlow?" No one answered. From the floor came a dry laugh, exactly like hers. Miles came behind me, took my hand. "Don't go down. The team is here." I nodded, but my eyes were still glued to the newspaper wall on the right. In the middle of the newspaper was a small round hole, exactly the size of a lens. I tore it off hard. Behind the fake wall was a pinhole camera, connected to a black wire running down. Next to it was a picture of Mrs. Whitlow and her son, Evan, his face marked with a Sharpie cross. The police arrived. One man held the door, 2 pried open the hatch. Cold air blew in. Flashlights circled. Voices from the basement said, "There's a small room, a side tunnel, signs of a long stay. No, no one." That again. No one. I leaned against the wall, cold sweat running down my face. Miles squeezed my shoulder. "It's done, Ria. Let's go." We left the building. As we walked down the steps, my phone rang. An unknown number. I picked it up. Silence. Then 3 knocks echoed through the speaker. Then a hoarse, close voice. "I'm in all the houses." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. That's when I understood. Evan never left. He just went into another house. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard tapping on the floor, breathing under the wood. Miles said he would come back tomorrow morning, but I knew he wouldn't wait. Evan never waits. At exactly 3:11, the light bulb flickered once. I understood. He touched the wire again. I took the folding knife, turned on the flashlight, and went to the warehouse at the end of the row. The lock was new, but the fingerprints were still wet. I opened it. It was dark and cold inside. The manhole cover the police had opened the day before was still open. I set up the recording phone, stated the time and location, and crawled down. The technical duct was tight, enough for a person to crawl through. The smell of mold and ointment mixed together. The flashlight beam swept over the cloth, the wires, the milk cartons. At the turn, there were long scratches like someone rubbing their shoulder. Then I heard a rustling sound. Rustling, followed by a long breath. I turned off the light. In the darkness, 2 reflective spots looked straight at me. Me. "Evan?" Hoarse voice. "You really came down." Me. I want to know why. Evan, you lie on me every night. I just knocked to say, stop pressing. I stepped back, turned the light on. He was as thin as a skeleton, his hair matted, his skin patchy. His hands were wrapped in black bandages. Every time he breathed, his collar rose and fell, making a hissing sound. Evan, Mom said if they knew, they would fill this place. I had to crawl to another house. Me. Where's your mom? Evan. On the floor. She's asleep. That sentence sent a chill down my spine. He crawled up again, close to me. I pulled out a knife and threatened, "Stop!" Evan laughed. His teeth were black, his lips cracked. Evan, if you come up, I will. He lunged at me. I threw the flashlight, the light swerving. I kicked him in the chest, then crawled back toward the hatch. But the manhole cover was closed. Someone, or he, had pulled the cord. I yelled, prying with my knife. His hoarse laugh echoed through the tunnel. "It's quieter here than on the floor. There's no light here." I pounded on the cover, shouted for Miles. The echoes echoed in 100 knocks. He crept close behind me, his hot breath on my neck. I stabbed backward, into bandages, not flesh. He roared, backing away. I took my chance, shoved the cover up. It wasn't locked. It popped. I emerged from the hatch, collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. At that moment, the phone rang. Miles called. Miles. Where are you? Me. Storage. He's still down there. Miles. Leave. I'm coming. I struggled to my feet. A crawling sound from the sewer, then 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I ran out into the hallway. The air from the vent above my head was blowing down, smelling of ointment. Back at Miles's house, I told him everything. He looked at the stains on my hands, said nothing, just pulled me inside, double-locked the door. "No one goes out tonight," he said. We sat next to each other, listening to the white noise from the speakers. The apartment was suffocatingly quiet. The lights flickered once, then a knock sounded, not from the floor but from the ceiling. Miles turned off the speakers. We both looked up. The kitchen vent was moving. There was a sound of metal rubbing against steel, clanking, clanking. A hoarse voice, very close. "I told you, if you come up, I'll come up." Miles grabbed the hammer, hit the bars. Silence. 10 seconds later, 3 knocks came from the bedroom. Miles. He moved through the duct. The whole area is connected. I turned on my phone and played the old recording. At the end of the file, there was a screeching sound of tires, the sound of a garbage truck in the basement. I suddenly understood. Me. He's out. He's in the basement. We rushed down the stairs. The basement was dark, smelled of gasoline and rust. The flashlight swept across the steel pipes. In the darkness, a red spot lit up. A camera LED then went out. A hoarse voice, sounding, "It's safe to stand still." Miles swung the flashlight. The light caught a pale face peeking between the pipes. Eyes wide, pupils black and smooth, looking straight at me. I smelled ointment, the smell of Mrs. Whitlow's room. Me. "Evan, stop." Evan. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm just crawling." A loud bang sounded from the ceiling. The wind reversed, the flashlight swayed. When the light returned, he was gone. Only a dirty handprint slid up the air duct, straight toward the apartment block with the children. Miles and I looked at each other. No time to call anyone. We ran. At the elevator, my phone rang. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. 3 knocks sounded very close. We turned our heads. The ceiling moved aside, revealing a human eye looking down, unblinking. A hoarse voice came through the phone, matching the breathing overhead. Mother said, "Tonight, the house on the left." As Miles and I ran out of the basement, his eyes were still looking down from the crack in the ceiling. That gaze followed us all the way to the stairs. He didn't speak, just looked, as if he was choosing the next person. We didn't go home. Miles pulled me to the house on the left where the child lived with his mother. He knocked on the door. "Open it, quick!" The landlady stuck her head out, her eyes still sleepy. "What's going on?" Slap! A loud sound from the floor. Then knock, knock, knock. She stood frozen. The baby in the room was screaming. I said quickly, "There's someone on the floor. Get out of here." She panicked, picked up the child, and as soon as she ran out, the wooden panel under the sofa burst open. A black charcoal-stained hand reached up and missed grabbing her ankle. Miles threw the tea cabinet down, shouting, "Block the hole!" We pulled chairs, pulled tables, pressed them against the floor. The knocking turned into pounding so hard it cracked the wood. I heard his voice. Mom said, "This house is mine." The police arrived 10 minutes later. When they opened the floor, there was only dampness and the smell of ointment. An officer flashed a flashlight down, shaking his head. "No one." I laughed hysterically. "Same thing, no one." Miles pulled me out, but before I left, I saw a faint trail of blood stretching from the basement to the corner of the kitchen. Under the light, the trail trembled slightly, as if drying. The house was locked down. But that night, my electricity was still flickering. Miles told me to stay at his house. I tried, but in my head I could still hear the knocking. 3 times, steady, slow, patient. About 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. I walked out. There was a cardboard box in front of the door. No name, no address. Inside was the teddy bear, the one I'd seen in Evan's pictures. Its neck was cut, and a pinhole camera was stuffed inside. The battery wire was still hot. Miles. "Who sent this?" Me. "I don't know, but he wants us to see." He checked the camera. It was still recording live. On the screen, the image was blurry. This same room, seen from the floor. We lifted the carpet. At the edge of the floor, there was a new gap, just big enough to fit a small tube. The wire ran down, still vibrating. Miles. "No way. He's following us through the same way." Me. "Not just following, he's coming up." Before I could pull the wire out, the lights in the whole area went out. The apartment was plunged into total darkness. Only the light from the camera screen remained. The image was shaking slightly, like someone was crawling close to the lens. My hand shook as I held the phone. The screen blurred and then became clear. An eye pressed against the camera, looking straight out. The eye did not blink. A hoarse voice, through the speaker. "Mom said if they close the floor, open the ceiling." At that moment, the living room ceiling cracked. A bony hand reached down, swiping hard, pulling off the white plaster. Miles grabbed my hand, pulling me to the door. But from behind, the 3-beat knock sounded again. Not in one place this time, but from all over the house. Floor, wall, ceiling, 3 beats, even, in unison. I shouted, "He's not down there! He's everywhere!" We rushed into the hallway. Neighbors opened their doors, panicked. A man shouted, "My walls are shaking!" Another girl cried, "There's someone in the duct!" The knocking echoed through the building, like a giant heartbeat. Miles dragged me down to the ground floor, but the stairs shook, dust falling. He turned on the flashlight. The beam swept through the crack that stretched from floor to ceiling, as if something were crawling up the concrete wall. When I reached the main door, the cold wind hit my face. I gasped, thinking I had escaped. But in the middle of the yard, under the flashing security lights, stood a thin figure. Messy hair, muddy shirt, bare feet, neck tilted to one side as if broken. Miles, hissing. "Rhea, get in!" The person looked up. It was Evan, but his face was smooth, like skin that had been peeled off and glued back together. He walked slowly, not speaking. I backed away, shaking my hand, holding the phone. The screen lit up. A new message appeared. No number. "If you see it, I'm up." I looked up. The wind blew hard. Evan was still standing there, but behind him, a second figure, shorter, thinner, was crawling out of the sewer pipe in the middle of the yard. A woman with silver hair, milky eyes, skin covered in coal. She looked up, speaking softly, just enough for me to hear. "You called them up. They're with you now." The courtyard lights flickered. In that moment, Evan and she were gone. Only the black puddle where they stood remained, spreading to my feet. Miles pulled me running, but I heard a knock, this time right under the soles of my feet, on the cold concrete. 3 beats, slow, and my phone, still on speaker, echoed the same hoarse voice, whose voice was unclear. You were standing on the door, and you didn't know it was open. I looked down. Between the two bricks in front of me, a small crack was slowly widening. I didn't have time to scream. The concrete cracked, and a wet hand reached up, grabbed my ankle, cold as iron. Miles screamed, "Ria, let go!" I threw the phone, grabbed the railing, but the pull was stronger than my body. In one last moment, I looked down. In the darkness below the crack, dozens of eyes were open, looking up, silent, waiting. When the explosion in the basement died down, I thought it was over. But that night, when the power went out, I heard breathing, not from the floor anymore, but from above. It was steady, dry, and long, like someone was lying face down on the ceiling, listening to me breathe again. 2:58 a.m. I was in the control center with Miles and two officers on duty. They had heat sensors all around the hallway. All the cameras were on. The map showed dozens of green dots. Silence, until a red dot blinked on the ceiling of the fourth floor. Miles, floor 4, right above yours. Me, right on time, 3:11. He held the flashlight. I followed. The fourth floor hallway was empty. A cold wind blew through, carrying the smell of ointment and burning coal. The door to apartment 404 was ajar. It was dark inside. We walked in. The walls were peeling, the floor was wet, and on the ceiling, the air duct cover was shaking slightly, as if someone were crawling inside. Miles, is anyone in there? No one answered, just 3 knocks, straight down. Then the cover fell. A black object fell to the floor. It was the teddy bear, the one I'd received in the box the day before. Its neck was torn open, the camera lens still flashing red. Miles bent down to pick it up, and inside the bear came a whisper. "Mommy said you wouldn't dare look up." I looked up. At that moment, 4 hands came from the ceiling, black claws clawing down, digging into the wall. A human head emerged, wrinkled skin, bloody hair, open mouth, lipless. I screamed. Miles pulled me to the door, but the ceiling collapsed, then split open. Dozens of other arms hung down like vines. There were children's hands, men's hands, women's hands. Nails broken, skin peeling. Everyone was flailing, trying to grab us. A hoarse voice. "Don't run. We just want to go up." We rushed out of the apartment. Banging could be heard from other rooms. There was a knocking sound in every apartment. Ceiling panels were blown open. People were screaming. Lights were flashing like the end of the world. A man ran into the hallway, screaming and dragging his little girl. They both fell when a hand from the duct grabbed her hair and pulled her back inside. The crying stopped. Miles, "We can't save her." Me, "They're going to swallow the whole building." 3:20 a.m. The police shouted for evacuation, but the electricity was dead. The elevator was stuck. The stairs collapsed. Miles and I were stuck on the 3rd floor, right in the central ventilation area. There was breathing, squealing, clawing from every direction. The walls shook like there was a living engine inside. Miles, "It's not human. It's something using a human body." Me, "The tunnel network doesn't die in the gas explosion. It spreads up. It breathes through us." At that moment, Miles's flashlight went out. The room went black. I heard heavy, dragging footsteps behind me. I turned the flashlight back on my phone and saw Evan. He stood in the middle of the room, his skin burned, his eyes white, his breath coming in gasps. He smiled, his lips split to his ears. "Evan, you go down, you go up, but you never leave." I backed away. Miles aimed the taser, fired. He jerked but didn't fall. From his neck, black threads emerged, wrapped around him, clung to the ceiling, pulled him up like a spider. "Miles, run!" We rushed into the hallway. The ceiling cracked all the way down the hallway, and others fell from it. Not just Evan, dozens of bodies crawled out of the air ducts, white-eyed, smiling. One of them was Mrs. Whitlow, hair burned, skin peeling, still holding the pillow. Whitlow, "It's hungry, it needs a place to stay." We ran toward the stairs. The wind blew back hard. as if something were sucking the air out of our lungs. I fell. The lamp fell. In the darkness, I heard Miles scream, then a heavy dragging sound. I grabbed the lamp, swung it out. The ceiling was open. Miles's legs were pulled up by black hands. His whole body was suspended. I rushed forward, grabbed his hand, but his skin was slippery. Miles, swearing. Rhea, don't, come down. Above, I saw Evan's mouth abnormally wide, swallowing half of Miles. I screamed until I was hoarse, but every sound was sucked away by the wind. I took the folding knife and cut the black thread around his neck. Black blood spurted from the ceiling, falling like rain. Miles fell unconscious. I dragged him to the stairs, but every step was sticky. Below, the fire from the basement was pouring back up, red. And above, hundreds of hands continued to tap 3 times in unison. I shouted, "Why me? What do you want?" The answer came in a collective breath, cold, damp, close to my ear. "We want to be on the floor." Then from the ceiling, dozens of faces dropped down, all wearing my face, wrinkled skin, blurred eyes, mouths moving the same sentence. "Come down here, Rhea. This is the top." I let go of Miles and backed away. Beneath my feet, the concrete floor cracked, the red glow from the fire shining up into an open pit. I turned one last time. Evan and Whitlow stood side by side on the ceiling, backlit, blood running down like rain. Whitlow, whispering, "The tunnel network has been starving for too long." I jumped. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a white light. The doctor said I was rescued from the rubble. Miles was missing. They said the basement had collapsed completely. No bodies were found. I said nothing. That night in the hospital room, the air conditioning was on low. I heard clearly 3 knocks under the bed, and the old hoarse voice, soft right next to my ear. "You're on top now." I couldn't live with that knocking anymore. After the collapse, after I left the hospital, I still heard it every night. 3 regular beats, not fast, not slow. No one else heard, only me. A week later, I returned to the building. It was sealed off, but I found a way to sneak in. The building was charred black, its steel frame exposed. The smell of burning mixed with rusted iron and wet ash. I didn't intend to stay long. I just wanted to understand. Why was there a network of tunnels? Why did they keep knocking? The basement engine room was intact, just ash and mud. I followed the broken air duct. Under the dust, I saw small handprints, childish, dry, pointing up, not down. I turned on my flashlight and went deeper. Under the iron pipes, there was an old wooden underground door, half buried in cement. I pushed away the mud and pulled out a small bronze plate. On it was engraved the worn words, "Shelter Area 1957." My heart stopped for a beat. I remembered an old newspaper saying, "This area was built on the foundation of an orphanage that had been bombed during the war." No one said there was still a tunnel. They had built a shelter for the children. Then there was a gas explosion. The whole camp suffocated, right here. They didn't dig it back. They just built a new building on top of it. And someone, Mrs. B. Whitlow, who had been the nurse at the camp, had lived here all along. Maybe she had found the shelter. Maybe she couldn't bear the thought of the children down there being forgotten. I opened the wooden door. Damp steam rose thickly. Below was a long room, stained walls, moss-covered floor. On the wall, scrawled in charcoal, "We knock so they remember." In the middle of the room was a broken desk. On the desk was an old medical file, the paper yellowed. I opened it. A list of 37 orphans, most of whom had suffered gas burns, with a note at the end, "Deaths, no bodies found." But the last page had writing in a different color. One left. The name was scrawled in pencil, Evan Whitlow. I gasped. Evan, not a stranger. The last child to survive that incident, and Mrs. Whitlow was his foster mother. She had raised him in the basement so that her son would not have to leave the other children. Years passed. She grew old. He still lived in the darkness, accustomed to the humidity, to the sound of the air ducts, to the 3 knocks, the rescue signal the camp had taught when trapped. Knock, 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 3 times. It meant, "I'm alive." I sat down on the floor, the flashlight flickering. Everything was clear, but it didn't make me feel relieved. Because if Evan knocked because he wanted people to listen, then why did he kill? I continued searching the room. At the end of the basement was a new cement wall, the edge still covered with construction tape. I used a crowbar to pry it open. Inside was a small room, dark and cold, the smell of ointment wafting up. The walls were covered with pictures of children, thin faces, deep-set black eyes. Each picture had 3 lines drawn across its forehead. Only one wasn't drawn. It was a picture of me, secretly taken from a teddy bear camera. I stepped back, my heart pounding. Behind the wall came the sound of something crawling, then a hoarse voice, no longer clear who it belonged to. They just want to be remembered. But you let them die again. I turned on the light. In the darkness of the wall, countless dry hands pressed against the cement, leaving muddy traces. The whole cellar shook slightly, dust falling like snow. I understood. The knocking was not meant to scare. It was a cry for help. The children who had suffocated in the past, they were still here. They had been knocking for 70 years, so that someone would hear. Mrs. Whitlow listened, and she dug. Then Evan grew up. Believing the world above the floor was a traitor, he took his mother's place, keeping his promise, keep them below. I left the cellar when it was just dawn. No one was left. The police had not arrived, only wind and ash. I turned back one last time, to the old wall now cracked. A new line emerged from the crack, the damp charcoal still fresh. The man on the floor never listens. I left. But when I got to the door, the ground shook slightly under my feet. 3 knocks sounded, even, distant, and tired. I bent down, touching the cold concrete. I heard, I whispered. I'll tell you. Then I walked away. A week later, the building was demolished. Workers said there were dozens of tunnels crisscrossing the floor, filled with the bodies of children wrapped in damp blankets. No one mentioned it again. The news was taken down after a few hours. No one knew who took it down. Only I knew, because every night, in my new apartment, I still heard 3 knocks, not for help, but as a reminder. Don't let them be silent again.